This child is not yours. This can't be, you treacherous witch!
Hold tight, this story is wild. The kind where a single moment can tear down a life that looks solid but was built on lies. I'm a 38-year-old man who climbed from nothing to running the top construction firm in Cedar Falls. I began as a laborer with rough hands and no money, but now I oversee more than 200 workers across 3 states, handling projects worth millions every year. What I built is the textbook American dream. Discipline, accuracy, and relentless drive turned me from a nobody into a wealthy contractor. 15 years ago, I married Angela Moody, 35, long seen as the prize of Cedar Falls. Blonde, sharp, and the daughter of a former mayor, she carried the old family name, though that Moody fortune had dried up years before. She wore the role of a rich man's wife perfectly. Charity dinners, grand parties, and keeping up our estate on Maple Ridge as if she had been raised for that life. We had Trevor, now 14, who mirrors me in almost every way. He's got my grit and his mom's smarts, thriving in both school and sports. I coached his baseball team, and we spent weekends in the garage crafting everything from birdhouses to tables. Those father-son projects became a tradition I cherished, even as Angela drifted away, always too busy with her social circles. When Angela announced she was pregnant 6 months ago, it should have been a miracle. After 14 years of marriage and several miscarriages that broke her down emotionally, we'd assumed Trevor would remain our only child. We made peace with that, grateful for the family we had. But from the instant she shared the news, I felt something wasn't right. Through this pregnancy, Angela shifted into someone I could hardly recognize. Once warm and involved, she grew cold and detached. She stopped including me in choices, vanished for hours with weak excuses, and returned with no shopping bags to back up her stories. She bought costly items for no reason and took private calls, smiling in a way that looked secretive rather than happy. Chuck Lake, my partner in business and best friend since high school, manages the money side while I run the jobs. He kept noticing odd things. His wife Sarah once spotted Angela in a cafe, leaning in close with some stranger no one knew. When Sarah waved, Angela flinched like she'd been caught red-handed. She checked her phone constantly. Her face lit up like she was texting someone she cared about, more than she should. "Man, she's off," Chuck told me one Friday over beers. "Sarah says she's out at weird times, jumpy, always looking over her shoulder." I brushed it off, telling myself it was hormones and stress. At 35, doctors call it advanced maternal age, with higher risks and emotional tolls. After losing so many pregnancies, I figured she was fragile and overcautious, struggling to handle this late surprise. The morning we were set for the standard ultrasound, Angela's nerves were far more than normal pregnancy worry. She pushed her food around without eating, checked every mirror like she was hunting for flaws, and carried an air of dread instead of joy. When I suggested we grab lunch afterward to celebrate seeing our baby, she just gave a weak nod, no spark at all. Our doctor, Edmund Harrington, had cared for our family for more than 10 years. He was in his 60s, silver hair at his temples, soft-spoken, with the kind of eyes that eased fear. He had brought dozens of kids into the world in Cedar Falls, and his name carried weight for honesty and compassion. Because of Angela's past losses and her age, he'd kept a close watch on this pregnancy, always mixing caution with genuine concern for us. I sat in his waiting room, half focused on my phone, scanning emails about our largest job yet, a high-end hotel project meant to cement Atkinson Construction as the go-to builder across the region. Chuck had sent me a message about an investor named Marcos Jennings asking questions about us. I made a mental note to check on it later, since expanding ties always mattered. Then Harrington came out, and he looked shattered. His steady manner was gone, replaced with shaking hands and a pale face. He asked me to step into his office, shut the door, and began pacing the floor like he didn't know how to start. "Jared, what I'm about to share is very hard, but you need the truth," he said, fixing me with eyes that carried weight. "The scan shows the baby's growth doesn't fit the dates Angela gave when we set her due date. The exact numbers point to conception about 26 weeks ago, not 23. The words didn't land right away. My voice cracked when I asked, 'What does that mean exactly?' 'It means this baby couldn't have been conceived during the time you and Angela were together,' he explained, steady but grim. 'From your wife's medical records and everything we discussed about your schedule, you were away in Denver during the real window of conception.' Denver, the biggest contract we'd ever taken on. I'd lived there nearly 3 weeks straight that January, working 18-hour days to make sure every detail was flawless. Every night I called Angela, counting down to when I'd come home and toast the win with her. "Doctor, are you certain? There's no mistake in the numbers." My words felt hollow under the weight of what I already knew. He nodded firmly. "I've run the calculations 3 separate times, there's no doubt. The baby's growth lines up exactly with conception while you were in Denver." The walls seemed to tilt as 15 years of marriage collapsed under a new, brutal light. Angela's odd moods during the pregnancy, her secret calls, the cold distance, the restless nerves, all of it snapped together into a clear image of betrayal carefully hidden in plain sight. Dr. Harrington held my gaze, his look full of pity but also anger on my behalf. "Jared, you're a decent man, far better than this lie. Whatever path you choose now, you must shield yourself and Trevor right away. If you want my advice, walk out of here and file for divorce before Angela twists this any further." But I didn't move. Instead, I asked to see the proof myself. He paused, then turned the screen toward me. There it was. Numbers and charts, bone length, organ growth, every measurement pointing to a conception date that removed all doubt. The child was thriving, but the truth was written in every line of data. This baby could not be mine. Back in the exam room, Angela lay with wet streaks on her cheeks, staring at the ceiling like she'd been waiting for this reckoning. She knew the truth had finally caught her. "Show me," I told Dr. Harrington, my voice calm in a way that startled even me. Angela turned her face toward me at last, eyes wide with fear and wet with tears. "Jared, please, let me explain." I shook my head, speaking low, my tone like ice. "No, you can't talk your way out of this." I studied the ultrasound for another long moment, memorizing every detail of the evidence that would change everything. Then I looked directly at my wife, the woman I'd loved and trusted for 15 years, the mother of my son, the person who'd just destroyed everything I believed about my life and family. "We're going home," I announced with supernatural calm that masked the rage building inside me. "We're going to have a very detailed conversation, and then you're going to tell me exactly who he is and how long this has been going on." Angela's face drained of all color as the reality of her situation became undeniable. That evening, I made the decision that probably saved my life and sanity. Instead of exploding emotionally or confronting Angela with accusations and demands, I got methodical. I'd built my business empire through careful planning, systematic execution, and unwavering attention to detail. Time to apply those same strategic skills to this personal catastrophe. I opened my laptop and began researching like my life depended on it, which it essentially did. My first search was for Marcos Jennings, and within minutes I found comprehensive information about Cedar Falls' newest hunter. Jennings Development Group maintained a sleek website showcasing luxury properties across multiple states, with Marcos featured prominently as the charismatic CEO who brings dreams to life through visionary real estate development. The man was handsome in that polished, artificial way that immediately repulsed me. All perfect white teeth, expensive designer suits, and the kind of superficial charm that concealed complete lack of substance. His LinkedIn profile showed attendance at the same charity fundraiser where he'd likely first encountered Angela, and his social media presence revealed someone who thrived on attention, luxury, and public validation. Digging deeper into his background, I discovered Marcos was married to Samantha Jennings, a prominent attorney in the state capitol. They had twin daughters, aged 10, and lived in a $1 million home in the city's most exclusive neighborhood. The irony wasn't lost on me that this dirtbag was systematically destroying multiple families simultaneously while presenting himself as a successful family man. Over the following week, I maintained my normal daily routine while secretly gathering intelligence with the patience of a professional hunter. I told Chuck that Angela was experiencing pregnancy complications requiring rest and reduced social activity, which explained her absence from community events and my own distracted demeanor. Chuck, demonstrating the loyalty that made our partnership successful, handled extra responsibilities without question or complaint. I hired Paul Hines, a former police detective turned private investigator who specialized in infidelity cases and had reputation for discretion, thoroughness, and results. Paul was exactly what I needed: professional, methodical, and completely committed to uncovering truth regardless of how painful it might be. Within 3 days, Paul delivered comprehensive documentation that painted a devastating picture of calculated betrayal. Angela and Marcos had been meeting twice weekly at the Grandview Hotel's luxury suite for 8 months, complete with time-stamped photographs, financial records, and communication logs that revealed the scope of their deception. The evidence was absolutely damning. Angela had been using money from our joint account to pay for hotel accommodations, lying to me about shopping trips or visiting her sister Muriel in the neighboring town, while actually driving 40 minutes to meet her lover in accommodations that cost more per night than most people earned in a week. But I demanded more than just evidence of physical infidelity. I wanted to understand the complete scope of their betrayal and ensure my response would be comprehensive and permanent. Through Paul's continued investigation, I learned that Angela and Marcos had been planning their escape route for months with meticulous detail that rivaled any business strategy. Their plan was diabolically simple. Angela would file for divorce immediately after the baby's birth, claiming irreconcilable differences while hiding the true cause. She'd demand half of everything I'd built over 15 years, using Connecticut's equitable distribution laws to fund her new life in the state capital with Marcos and their child. They'd already placed deposits on a luxury penthouse apartment downtown and researched private schools for their future family. The depth of Angela's betrayal was staggering beyond anything I could have imagined. This wasn't passionate mistake or momentary weakness. This was systematic, calculated destruction of our marriage designed to maximize her financial gain while minimizing consequences for her choices. During this week of intense investigation, Angela grew increasingly nervous and paranoid, sensing my emotional distance, but apparently believing she could maintain her charade through sheer determination. She even had the audacity to ask about paint colors for the nursery, while continuing her twice-weekly meetings with Marcos, playing devoted wife, while actively planning our family's destruction. My respect for Angela evaporated completely as I watched her perform this elaborate deception with skill that suggested years of practice. The woman I'd loved had revealed herself as the manipulative sociopath, capable of looking me directly in the eyes while lying about the most fundamental aspects of our relationship. But I wasn't finished gathering ammunition for the war I was planning. Through Paul's investigation, I discovered that Marcos Jennings was far more than just an adulterer. He was a criminal whose business practices provided multiple avenues for legal destruction. During a business meeting I arranged under pretense of potential partnership, Atkinson Construction's reputation made us attractive to any developer. Marcos eagerly revealed details about his various projects while inadvertently confessing to numerous regulatory violations and illegal cost-cutting measures. "I've found that sometimes you have to be creative with environmental regulations," Marcos said with conspiratorial wink, apparently believing he was impressing a simple small-town contractor. "Environmental impact studies can be interpreted flexibly if you know the right people in the regulatory agencies." I nodded thoughtfully while secretly recording every word on my phone. "That sounds very interesting. I'd love to see some of your sites firsthand to understand your methods." Over the following week, I visited 3 of Marcos's current projects, documenting everything with photographer's precision: safety violations that endangered workers, environmental damage that violated federal regulations, building code violations that compromised structural integrity, and evidence of bribery involving local inspectors. Each site visit provided more ammunition for the legal destruction I was planning. Marcos had been cutting corners everywhere, prioritizing profit over safety, legality, or basic human decency. His entire business empire was built on fraud, corruption, and criminal negligence. Meanwhile, I worked with my attorney Jeffrey Dunn to restructure Atkinson Construction's corporate organization, protecting assets from any potential divorce settlement through legitimate legal strategies that would ensure Angela couldn't destroy what I'd spent 15 years building. "Jared, if you're concerned about liability issues, we can create a more complex corporate structure that shields personal assets from business risks," Jeffrey suggested during one of our confidential meetings. "Do it," I replied without hesitation. "I want everything protected: the house, the business, Trevor's college fund, every asset we control." Jeffrey was an old friend who'd helped me build my business empire from nothing, and he asked no questions when I requested the most aggressive asset protection strategies available under Connecticut law. 2 weeks after the ultrasound revelation, I was ready to execute the most comprehensive destruction of enemies I'd ever planned. Unlike my construction projects that created something valuable, this campaign would systematically demolish the lives of people who'd betrayed my trust and threatened my family's future. Phase 1. I contacted the Environmental Protection Agency with comprehensive documentation of violations at Marcos's construction sites. The evidence was overwhelming: photographs, recorded conversations admitting illegal practices, and documentation of environmental damage that put both workers and public at risk. Phase 2. I called the Internal Revenue Service with detailed information about Marcos's tax fraud schemes he'd bragged about during our meetings, including offshore accounts and unreported income that constituted federal crimes. Phase 3. I contacted Samantha Jennings, Marcos's unsuspecting wife, who deserved to know the truth about her husband's double life before making any decisions about her family's future. Mrs. Jennings, my name is Jared Atkinson. I have critical information about your husband that you need to know immediately. Could we meet for coffee this morning? Samantha's voice was cautious, but curious. I'm not sure what this could be about, Mr. Atkinson. Your husband is having an affair with my wife, and they're planning to abandon both families. I have extensive documentation, and I thought you should see everything before making decisions about your future and your daughter's welfare. We met at a coffee shop near Samantha's law office, where I presented copies of everything Paul had gathered: surveillance photographs showing intimate moments, hotel receipts proving regular meetings, text messages obtained through various investigative methods, and the ultrasound proving Angela was carrying Marcos's child. Samantha Jennings was an impressive woman, intelligent, composed, and clearly devastated by the evidence, but determined to handle the situation with professional competence rather than emotional hysteria. As a family law attorney, she understood the legal implications immediately and began formulating strategy while processing the personal betrayal. This documentation is incredibly comprehensive, she said, reviewing everything with lawyer's eye for detail. You've essentially built an airtight case against both of them. That was precisely my intention, I replied. Your husband has been planning to abandon you and your daughters for my wife. They believe they're going to take half of everything I've built to fund their new life together. Samantha's eyes hardened with determination I recognized from my own mirror. Not if I file first. Marcos doesn't realize that I've been documenting his suspicious behavior for months. Combined with your evidence, we can ensure he faces appropriate consequences. We spent the next hour coordinating our legal strategies with precision that would have impressed military commanders. Samantha would file for divorce that afternoon, seeking full custody of their daughters and requesting comprehensive forensic accounting of all Marcos's business dealings and personal assets. Her extensive legal connections would ensure the process moved quickly and aggressively, catching Marcos completely off guard before he could hide assets or manipulate the situation. Meanwhile, I would trigger the federal investigations while protecting my own interests through the corporate restructuring Jeffrey had prepared. The timing was crucial. Everything had to happen simultaneously to prevent either Angela or Marcos from escaping consequences or coordinating their defense. Monday morning arrived like Judgment Day, and I executed my plan with the same precision I applied to major construction projects. At exactly 7 a.m., while Angela was still sleeping and Trevor was preparing for school, I made the calls that would destroy 2 lives built on deception. Within 24 hours, the domino effect exceeded even my expectations. Federal agents raided Marcos's office with search warrants related to environmental violations. His wife filed for divorce with emergency motions freezing all assets. Major investors pulled funding citing reputational concerns. Criminal charges were filed for embezzlement Paul had discovered during his investigation. Angela watched her elaborate escape plan disintegrate in real time as the man she'd betrayed our family for transformed from luxury lifestyle to federal criminal facing serious prison time. When she finally reached Marcos by phone, he was barely coherent. Everything's completely ruined. Federal agents seized everything. Samantha's frozen all our accounts. Every investor is backing out. I don't understand how this happened so quickly. Jared happened, Angela told him with bitter recognition of the trap they'd walked into. He knew everything. He's been planning our destruction for weeks. That conversation ended with Marcos hanging up, leaving Angela alone in hotel room surrounded by the wreckage of choices that had seemed so clever just days earlier. The aftermath was swift, brutal, and absolutely satisfying. Marcos received 7 years in federal prison for embezzlement and environmental crimes. His business collapsed into bankruptcy with assets seized to pay restitution. His reputation was destroyed beyond any possibility of recovery. Angela gave birth to their daughter Cora in December, facing motherhood completely alone, while the baby's father served time in federal prison. The once proud mayor's daughter now works part-time at grocery store, living in small apartment, struggling with single motherhood, supported only by welfare and minimal alimony. The infidelity clause in our prenuptial agreement, which Angela had forgotten about during her planning, voided most of her financial protections and left her with barely enough to survive. Her dreams of luxury and sophistication had transformed into exactly the kind of poverty she'd always looked down upon. Meanwhile, my life improved dramatically in every measurable way. The divorce was finalized, with Angela receiving far less than she'd expected. Atkinson Construction landed major new contracts as clients appreciated the integrity I'd demonstrated during the crisis. My business expanded into additional states and now employs over 400 people. Trevor handled everything with remarkable maturity, though I could see the pain in his eyes when he thought I wasn't watching. We grew even closer through the crisis, spending evenings working on projects and weekends exploring hiking trails around Cedar Falls, while rebuilding our lives on foundation of honesty. I eventually found genuine love again with Pearl Downing, a widow who moved to town to be near her adult children. We built our relationship carefully over 18 months, both understanding the critical importance of authentic foundation rather than rushing into commitment based on loneliness or rebound emotions. 3 years later, the transformation is complete and permanent. Angela has continued rebuilding her life through genuine effort and hard work. She graduated from community college, earned promotion to assistant manager, and seems to finally understand that choices have consequences that can't be avoided through charm or manipulation. Marco still has 5 years remaining in federal prison, and his ex-wife has successfully moved their daughters across the country, where they can build new lives free from their father's criminal legacy. Dr. Harrington retired but occasionally joins me for coffee to discuss the ethical challenges of his profession. "You handled that situation better than anyone could have expected," he told me recently. "It took courage to tell you the truth, but everyone involved needed to face reality instead of living elaborate lies." Looking back with perfect clarity, I have zero regrets about trusting Angela initially, about how I handled discovering the truth, or about the consequences that followed for everyone involved. My only regret is that it required such devastating crisis to show me the difference between the life I thought I wanted and the authentic life I actually needed. The foundation is solid now, built on bedrock of truth rather than sand of deception. Whatever challenges the future holds, I'm completely prepared, surrounded by people whose love is genuine and whose loyalty has been tested under extreme pressure and proven absolutely reliable. The ultrasound that revealed the lie ultimately delivered the truth that set everyone free to build better lives. Sometimes the most devastating betrayal leads to the most positive transformation, if you handle it with patience, intelligence, and strategic planning rather than just raw emotional reaction.